meeting to order and thank everyone for attending. We have a fairly robust agenda, so I don't want to waste a lot of time, but did want to thank Amy Kraus, the Health District Director, for joining us along with everyone else. And we'll just go right into public comments if there are any.
I have 2 attendees and I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
Okay. We'll give them.
And just to let you know, Deputy Mayor, I wanted to, I know for a fact that Chief Jones won't be attending. I'm not sure if Chief Barnett will be because they're doing a swearing-in ceremony for the Fire Marshal, Jim Simone, at this time.
That starts at 6:30, correct?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Going once, going twice. Anything from the public with respect to comments? Okay. We can circle back. And why don't we go into, Amy, are you prepared? We have you on the agenda next.
Yeah, I can speak.
Okay, thank you.
So good evening, everyone, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Davis, for asking me to give an update. So I just wanted to provide a quick update regarding Wedgwood apartment complex. As you know, the Health District has been working on fielding and following up on some complaints. I am happy to report a majority of the complaints that the Health District has received have been completed. We still, specifically for Wedgwood, have one additional complaint that's still open. That is for the apartment that had the sewer break. They are currently treating all basements for mold and completing a sanitizing process. So they have a couple more coats of a treatment that need to be provided. Specifically for the apartment 2 that was affected, all carpet's been removed and ripped out. About a foot of sheetrock has been taken off around the whole apartment. Professional cleaning company came in and disinfected the whole unit, and they're now in the process to have new sheetrock again, obviously with appropriate inspections by the building department. So these are all great things that have happened in transitioning over at Wedgwood. The Health District did participate in a meeting with the management company as well as the attorney. I was not specifically at that meeting, my staff was, but it was a good form of communication that occurred. I'd be happy if Town Manager Hawthorne, if you'd like to add anything afterwards, but it was a great conversation that happened. A lot of new information was learned. And so that was my report on specifically for Wedgwood. Before I move on to just additional Health District activities, I didn't know if you had any questions for me.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? I see we have Councilperson Mahan and McCleary have joined us. Any questions for the director about Wedgwood?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Yes.
I got a message from a resident that the tub that was reglazed is peeling. Was that resolved? Did she get a complaint from the resident about that recently?
No, she did not contact the Health District, but I would be happy, based upon your referral, I can have our staff person reach out, but I was not made aware that it was bubbling.
Yeah, so they glazed it when we had the situation a couple of weeks ago, and then maybe 2 weeks ago, I got a text message. I've been behind in my emails and messages that the tub is still causing the issue. So if we can get someone to look at that, that would be great.
Sure, we will reach out to that tenant.
Thank you. And is there any other open complaints currently? Sorry, I was late.
Yep. So the one complaint that we still have open is specific for apartment 2, which is vacant. And that is where they have removed all the carpet, about a foot of sheetrock, a cleaning company, a professional cleaning company came in, disinfected the whole unit. And then they are working to put new sheetrock up, obviously with the building department's approval and inspection. All the basements are now being treated with a special coat of treatment and sanitizing process that is occurring in the basements. I do not have any other complaints at Wedgewood that have been called in by tenants or referrals.
Okay.
I do want to add, during the meeting that we met with back in August, one of the concerns that was brought to my attention were that tenants were paying to utilize a pool that was closed. After discussions with legal, the tenants are not paying for a closed pool. So I would just like to bring that forward as well.
Okay. Councilperson Mahan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and my apologies for being late as well. I was having difficulties getting everything on my laptop for some reason. So the one thing that I heard towards the tail end of the report was that there was a meeting that occurred and there were a lot of things that were learned. Do you mind, can you elaborate on some of those things that were learned during that meeting?
It was about the eviction process. It was about owners and management trying to get into complete work inside tenant units. So again, I'll let Town Manager Hawthorne speak if he'd like, if you welcome that. And again, just provide that update for you.
Yes, obviously it was a, as I guess logically you would expect, a different perspective coming from the property management and the legal representative who was there, but we asked them to speak candidly. One of the first things that they identified after I questioned them on it was that the only reason that they didn't participate at one of the forums that we had was due to a conflict. They raised issues of retaliation of staff and things that had been done to staff. They obviously talked about their plans and improvements that they were in the middle of. Reference was made to information that was out there that they thought was given unfairly a name to ownership and management, which they didn't threaten, but they did point out that some of those things could be pursued on their part. I think the most productive aspect of the meeting was the continuing follow-up that has taken place on different issues that they have acknowledged in working with this. So all in all, it was a productive meeting.
Was anything discussed regarding, because in the beginning of Amy's answer, she mentioned something about evictions. And thank you very much as well for your response, Town Manager Hawthorne. I appreciate that. I see the orange tie, Bloomfield orange. I like that. Was anything discussed regarding the two residents, at least that I know of, that were facing evictions? There is one lady that had a young child that's in the Bloomfield School District, and as well as there's another lady who brought up the complaint about the water that was in the basement that also faced evictions. Were any of those two specific cases discussed?
No, the first one was, I don't remember all of the details, but obviously, I think that first case, from their perspective, I guess there had been some acceptance or signature by the tenant to leave occupancy as opposed to it being a circumstance where they had to be taken to court or anything like that. Amy gave an update on some of the basement issues, but I don't remember anything specific to an eviction. Counselor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think specifically it was a tenant by the name of Miss Jefferson, and I have her down as a B4.
Yes, if I may.
Mm.
So that the attorney would not go into further detail because it was a legal proceeding. So they would not share specific information about those certain cases. But again, that they were moving forward for lack of rent payment and solely based upon lack of rent payment.
Okay. All right. All right. Councilperson McClary, is that a new hand or is that a legacy?
Yes, sir. Just a quick question. Maybe it's been touched on, Mr. Chair. But did we get an update as it relates to where we are with the ordinance correction? I know at the meeting, representatives from the health district talked about how our current ordinance doesn't give them allow them the opportunity to be folks to issue fines. And so I think they wanted to be constables. Do we have an update on where we are with that ordinance? Language change?
The town attorney has advised me after he certainly worked with the health district and seen some of their recommendations. And he's advised me that he will have the initial draft ordinance at least by the September 28th town council business workshop. I don't know if we will have that in far enough advance to put it actually on the agenda because we've got a pretty full agenda and that's intended to be pretty high level discussion, but I expect that we'll at least have presented it to the town council for review, but action may not be scheduled until the next meeting, which will probably be the first meeting in October.
All right. And I guess I only have one comment or maybe a point of clarification for Amy. You mentioned that there were not direct charges for the pool, but it's my understanding that the pool access is included in their rent, so that it's not a separate charge to use the pool, but it's all inclusive of, you know, their amenities and what the tenants have paying to access. So I think there is some justification in the comments made by the residents that they're paying rent for an amenity that should be included that has not been accessible for over a year.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is, I just would like to just share, there is a process within the state of Connecticut. So all public pools are required to get approval from the Department of Public Health. So that's where the process starts first, and then it makes its way to myself in my office for a final inspection. So I do not get into the charging or paying for, but again, on behalf of the tenants, that information was asked of the attorney, and it was provided that they were not being charged for that pool. So I'll just wanted to let you know the process at least.
And Mr. Town Manager, can you just give us the date that meeting took place with the property management and their attorney, if you recollect?
India may have that, but I would say
get it to me later. You know,
it's probably a week or so after our.
It was on September 17th at 6 p.m.
9/17. Wait a minute.
So August.
I'm sorry, y'all. August. I'm looking at my calendar on the computer now. I'm sorry. August 17th at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Any other questions or comments for Amy? Okay.
I would like to just provide, if I may, just additional, separate from Wedgewood, just additional items that the health district is currently doing for the town of Bloomfield. So as you know, the new COVID booster is out, the bivalent. We are vaccinating at the Bloomfield Senior Center for a National Senior Center Month on September 20th from 9:30 to 12:30. We are also holding another public clinic on September 27th from 10 to 12. We are going to be setting up October clinics, which also includes flu clinics as well. The health district is also holding a diabetes workshop. We currently have a grant through the Department of Public Health and have been offering diabetes classes. We work with a wonderful dietitian. And so those classes are beginning October 6th, and individuals can register by calling my office. They meet Thursdays during the days, again, virtually. We are still doing and are very busy vaccinating children for immunizations in our office, and those are on Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. We are providing what's called QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer, suicide and Narcan training with Ellen White with the Bloomfield volunteer ambulance. That training is being held at 330 Park, September 27th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And then lastly, a new program which we are bringing to Bloomfield is a walk-in confidential rapid HIV and hepatitis C testing. That is going to be beginning on Fridays, starting September 16th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. In the nursing office that we utilize. We currently are there in the Bloomfield Senior Center every Tuesday doing blood pressures, checking on residents that come to see us, whether they have medication questions, other health related questions, just even coming in to say hello because they want to say hi. So we are there again every Tuesday. And so this is a good opportunity if individuals are looking to get tested or have concerns. When we were doing, if you remember, I came and asked to run a community health assessment not too long ago. So one of the things that we looked at in our data is that Bloomfield's HIV rate is higher than the state rate. And so one of the things we wanted to address and make available is this rapid HIV and hepatitis C testing. So this testing is done in conjunction with the Community Renewal Team, also known as CRT, in collaboration with the Health District. We are also working with the Bloomfield schools, Wendy Shepherd Banish again. Our State Board of Education calls now have started on Tuesdays. So we are helping with contact tracing again, just fielding questions, checking on vaccination status. There's still questions, what do I do? Mom and dad have tested positive. Can the child return to school? Do they need to be vaccinated in order to return to school? What's considered to be fully vaccinated? So all those great questions are coming into the health district, and we're acting as a liaison for the state. Again, just wanted to provide you some quick updates that the health district is working on for the month of September. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
No, thank you. That was very helpful. Any questions or comments, Randy? Here now. Thank you so much, Amy. Next on the agenda, Chief Hammock for the Police Department update.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I think I've got my screen sharing here. So we'll go on, start out with the stats. We had, as I'm glad to report, every month we had 0 homicides. We had 0 sexual assaults for the month of August. We had no robberies. We did have 1 aggravated assault. That was a shots fired incident out on Forest Lane. In August, we had no injuries, but we did have property damage involved in that, and our detective division is actively investigating. We had, unfortunately, 9 burglaries for the month. 3 of those were commercial burglaries. We do have a suspect in one of those cases, but awaiting DNA verification in that case. And we did have 3 residential cases. There's no pattern, it doesn't appear at this time. 2, there was only damage. And then one on Adams Road, we had some significant jewelry taken. So the detectives and our K-9 officer are working on that case to see if we can find any solvability factors. Larcenies, we had 45 for the month. The vast majority, as I've reported in the past, were shoplifting almost exclusively at the Tobacco Plaza. So we're continuing extra attention there. But this is an area that has risen not only in Bloomfield, but throughout the state and throughout the nation. Post-pandemic, we've seen just a rise in larcenies nationwide, and ours have continued to plague us at our major retail establishments. Auto thefts, we had 4. We had one one truck trailer that was stolen up by Home Depot. We had one car that had been left at Firestone in Tobacco Plaza for over 30 days. And then they finally realized that it was gone. So it's reported stolen at this time, but we may be able to remove that stat because we think that it's just an anomaly. And then we had 2 that hopefully this isn't a trend that starts again, but keys left in the vehicle, key fobs in the driveway. From a personnel perspective, we still have 4 vacancies. We did start 2 officers in the Hartford Academy at the end of August. So they started their training. They're doing very well. Our latest recruits that came out of the academy have all finished their field training and are doing very well. So at this time, we think we're going to be able to promote a supervisor. That'll be our last supervisor position, and perhaps our open detective position. We're starting to get a little bit of stability there in the numbers, and with summer vacation cycle, I think that we can support making those promotions. I did extend an offer to a candidate for animal control officer. Unfortunately, fortunately, she accepted the job. She's an outstanding candidate, currently a part-time animal control officer in East Hartford. Unfortunately, there was a little conflict because the other candidate was unhappy with the process. But I think that that's been explained clearly. And the better candidate in this case was selected for the town and for the community and for the police department and the community rather. From traffic statistics, we had 59 motor vehicle accidents. Officers did conduct 382 motor vehicle stops. So that number is staying very high as a result of our traffic calming efforts. And officers made 6 DUI arrests for the month of August. Primarily, most of our traffic details have been focused on those streets that have come up in the traffic calming committee discussions. Prospect, along with we have the 2 stop signs that have been put up there. Brown Street, Wittenberry, Maple Ave, Blue Hills Ave, and Gab Road, as well as Burr Road. We'll be doing Mills Lane now, and we're going to be adding a couple more streets, Coventry, etc., over the next week. Some of the complaints, the new complaints that we received through the traffic committee and to the police department, Jackson Road, we received a complaint of speeding. Woodland, Prospect, Phoenix Crossing, those were tractor trailer parking issues. Gab Road, which we had our public meeting last month, and Mills Lane, which we have scheduled the public meeting. I believe it's October 12th. The speed shields are currently located on Wittenberry, Philly, Tunxus, Maple Ave, Jackson Road southbound. We wanted to collect some additional data there, and Terry Plains Road westbound. We had a positive thing for the month. We had no citizen complaints. We did have 7 uses of force that I'll go over quickly. One was a physical takedown of a suspect who was fleeing. 5 were basic control holds on uncooperative suspects. And 1 was an incident, family violence case where the officer had to display a firearm because there was a threatening involving a knife. And I apologize for the small font, but it's the only way that I could fit it onto one slide with my limited technical ability. First case, officers responded to a domestic. The suspect was not compliant, and while being placed under arrest, we had to use, or the officers had to use compliance techniques. And what I've described in the past is anytime that an officer puts their hand on someone, it's considered a use of force, and we document that. This case, as well as the remaining 6, we have reviewed. They all are on videotape. They all appear to be well within compliance on the department policy and our state standards. In the second case, officers responded to a disturbance and determined that the person was suffering from a mental health crisis. They needed to commit the person. That individual went limp, causing the officers to have to carry them to a stretcher and transport them for evaluation. In the third, we responded to another domestic disturbance. One of the suspect in the case was holding a kitchen knife and threatening the victim. One of the officers drew their weapon, pointed it at the individual, ordered him to drop the knife. The suspect complied. While there's no hands-on, still, as I've talked about in the past, anytime that an officer points their firearm at someone, as you can imagine, it's considered a use of force, and a use of force for our reporting standards, certainly. In the fourth case, officers were attempting to process a prisoner in our detention division. The prisoner was non-compliant, became aggressive, and while they tried to get him back to the cell, they had to use arm restraints to get the prisoner back into the lockup. We reviewed that case. It's on both body cam and our in-house cameras. It's all appeared well within compliance standards for our policies and state standards. In the fifth case, officers responded to a report that a female caller was being followed by an unknown man on a moped, a suspicious individual. The officers responded to the area, found the suspect, who eventually stopped his moped in a parking lot. When the officer grabbed hold of him, he started to drive away. He jumped off the moped and fled on foot. Officers pursued the suspect, and he was tackled, taken to the ground, and later transported to the hospital before being placed under arrest. We reviewed that case. The officers exercised good judgment. They used an amount of force that was appropriate and necessary in the situation, and it was in compliance with our standards and our policies. In the sixth, officers responded to a mental health crisis, determined that the person had to be committed for evaluation. They used hand controls to get that person onto a stretcher. That case, again, was within compliance. And on the last case, while speaking with a person regarding the whereabouts of an assault suspect, it was determined that the party had an outstanding arrest warrant. While they attempted to place the person under arrest, she fell to the ground in an attempt to resist. They had to use arm controls to secure her, place her in handcuffs, and take her into custody. So that's the 7 cases, unfortunately, for this month. But again, all within compliance on state standards and our policies. From Bloomfield Volunteer Ambulance, an EMR refresher was held last week for some of our officers and Windsor PD, along with the CPR recertification. There were 2 CPR classes held for citizens in the community over the past month by BVA. We did hire our first part-time paid EMT who began working at BVA approximately a month ago. He's a former volunteer. Ellen tells me she's very confident and very positive and has very good feeling about how this is going to work out. So the Bva Awards Banquet is scheduled for Saturday, the 17th. The volunteers and recent retirees are going to be recognized for their years of service to the Bloomfield community. And we continue to help Amy and the health district at their vaccine clinics. And we'll be supporting Yvette over at the senior fair. And of course, we're always at the Bloomfield High School football games. So that is my report. And I am here to answer any questions, which I'm sure we have some, particular on traffic issues, I know.
Okay, any questions for the chief? Councilperson McClary.
Thank you. Chief, did you mention Coventry Street? I know I was just recently tagged on Facebook with the question relative to help and assist with traffic calming devices on Coventry Street.
It's funny you should say you got tagged. I got a text message at 5 o'clock this morning. I didn't know there was that much traffic at 5 a.m., but apparently there is on Coventry Street.
Yeah.
Coventry's an interesting street because the majority of its length is enforced by the city of Hartford. Years ago, they put up traffic calming measures south of Tower Avenue in front of the old Bergdorf Health Clinic.
It's still there.
Yeah, they put the speed humps up there from Keeney Park down to Tower Avenue. North of Tower Avenue, I think there's one traffic sign, one speed sign reads 30 miles per hour on the street. Previous council, Councilman Goff was an advocate for doing enforcement and trying to get that onto the traffic calming initiative as one of the primary streets. We put the speed reader devices out there a few times. Most recently, we put them out there last July for, I believe it was a 2-week period. The average speed on our portion of Tower Avenue, the Bloomfield portion of Coventry Street rather, was 24 miles an hour. So it was underneath the speed limit. The 85th percentile was 29 miles per hour. So to be very honest with you, we prioritized the other streets. In fact, Elizabeth, Miriam, those speeds were higher than Coventry Street. So we prioritized those streets for enforcement and then traffic calming. They got the speed humps as part of the first 2 streets that received our traffic calming efforts. Then we moved on to Prospect, and now we're looking at some of the other streets in the western part of town. I will put the speed shield device out there. We currently have it on Jackson. We're taking another measurement on Mills Lane. We want to do some on Maple. We just took them off of Burr and Gab Road. But I'll put them out there on Coventry Street and see what's going on. And then we'll have the officers out there to do enforcement.
Quick follow-up, if you don't mind. Do you think it's worth us doing just a comprehensive, and I know we're about to approach budget season in the next 3 months. Do you think it's worth us doing a comprehensive traffic study all across town so we can collect the data to kind of figure out, so we're not piecemealing this, right? Just doing a comprehensive study of the town and having a consultant come in and tell us where the hot zones are and where the priority should be based on data. Because I know you've mentioned in the past that the speed shield is not really scientifically, it's just a snapshot. And so, do you think we'll be benefit from that? And then when you say, one follow-up, when you say that portions of Coventry Street is enforced by Hartford, is the east side of Coventry Street covered by us? And then I know it goes up to a certain point where the west and the east side is ours. But I think as you get to, I think it's Pershing Street, half of it is Bloomfield, and I think the other half is Hartford. And then as you go south towards Tower, I think it becomes Hartford on the west side, correct?
Yeah, well, so 2 distinct questions. So let me try to address the first one. I can certainly talk to Jonathan TC about a comprehensive traffic study. We had those discussions a few years ago when we came up with the local road safety program. And it was the feeling of council at the time that we wanted to move in that direction to identify and have a comprehensive policy, town policy, on how we were going to identify streets that had issues. We were going to have a series of meetings with neighborhood residents to find out if there was a problem, and then what we could do to apply town resources to affecting those problems. At the time, there were many different factions advocating for specific streets in town. The policy allowed us to apply an objective measurement rather than subjective to those streets that were identified as having problems. Coventry is a good example. Coventry Street came up. We put the speed shields out there. We gathered the necessary data and found that the perception was that there was speeding, but in reality, we weren't seeing that in the numbers. It wasn't there. I'm not saying that further south on the Hartford end, where it's a little bit more open and there's a longer area to build up speed, that there might be, but where we set up the speed shields, we had them at 2 different locations, we just weren't seeing that data. Now, when we set them up on Elizabeth, Miriam, Prospect Avenue, Mills Lane, and a number of other streets, we did see that issue. We saw that we had significant issues with speeding. And that's why the speed humps were identified as a good mechanism for traffic calming on Elizabeth and on Miriam to have a direct impact on those streets. I don't think that the data didn't support speed humps on Coventry Street, and I'm not sure that that would be the best application there. But with that said, I think we can put the meters out there and grab additional data. Now, with respect to who is responsible, at the town line, which is, I thought it was East Harold, but I'll check, it could be Pershing. North of that is 100% Bloomfield. South of that town line is 100% Hartford, City of Hartford. It may be that Bloomfield is on the west side and Hartford is on the east side, but the agreement between the towns is that Hartford has all traffic enforcement and road maintenance south of that line. And Bloomfield has everything north of that line. So I can we already made a call into Hartford today. I haven't had a conversation with the chief there to see if we can do some additional enforcement on their end and see if we can make an improvement there. But again, and I'll put up the data shields as soon as they're free to see if we're seeing a change in the data that we got just a year ago.
Councilmember Claire, are you good?
I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one more question related to the Traffic Common Committee. I know I've heard a number of complaints relative to the amount of red tape for certain areas to get on the Traffic Common Committee's agenda. And then once that happens from point A to point B, is there a mechanism, or have we looked at it? Maybe there's a question for Jonathan, for us to kind of scale or do some lean management as it relates to the process in which residents have to go through to try to get either on the Traffic Common Committee, and then when they do get there, to get the traffic common mechanisms implemented in their neighborhoods.
So I think there's always room for improvement. I'll say that. But I think the local road safety committee and the town policy on how we're going to address neighborhood and resident complaints about traffic and nuisance issues involving traffic, I think the policy is a good policy. I think what happened was that when we first passed it, there were so many requests that we just couldn't keep pace with how many we were getting. So we were trying to do it as comprehensive as possible. But if you schedule a meeting one month and you hold 2 streets, Woodland Street, we had 30 people who attended the meeting, and you have to give everybody an opportunity to speak. That meeting went on for almost 3 hours. Gab Road and Burr Road, we had some very passionate members there about both of those streets. We had a passionate resident in town about another street as well, about Maple Avenue, that came up during that conversation. Some of the streets, and I'll go back to Elizabeth, Miriam, Prospect, the solutions for the problem that we were seeing was relatively straightforward, and it was within the budget that we were allotted for the fiscal year. Other streets, Maple Avenue is a good example, and Woodland Street is a good example. The engineering and the planning for those is and was much more comprehensive, and the solutions are much more expensive. So I believe at next month's meeting, Public Safety Jonathan is going to come and present some of the solutions for Maple Avenue, Woodland Street, that involve re-engineering of the roadway, the addition of, significant barriers to divert traffic. But they're big ticket items, and they need to be presented to the council to determine if that is something that you want to support and fund going forward. So I can appreciate, and certainly I understand some of the residents' frustration, but it's not, you can't just pop a speed bump somewhere and think that it's going to work. There has to be a lot of analysis that goes into it. The numbers have to support a speed hump going out there, because everything that we do to modify the roadway, as you can probably appreciate, creates an impact on neighbors and creates a potential liability issue for the town.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Just a couple of follow-up questions. I applaud the town for doing tremendous work with Elizabeth and Miriam, the speed humps that were installed about, 6-7 weeks ago.
Right.
I've heard from a couple of neighbors on Harding that what has happened is that the traffic has gone from those two streets down to Harding and Gilbert as a cut through. And I wanted to find out, of course, we've heard from neighbors on the two streets that have the speed humps that the traffic has calmed and they're very happy with the speed humps. The question is, are those humps semi-temporary? Are they permanent, or they are permanent?
Yeah, we initially, if you remember a couple months back, we talked about Jonathan purchased some temporary humps, but the installation process was very difficult. So what we did instead was we contracted with a paving firm to come out and install permanent humps. So that's what's on Miriam and Elizabeth. And I don't think it was the same meeting. It might have been the meeting after that. We talked about, and I think we talked about it initially when we were standing out on Elizabeth. When we put them in, what's going to happen is the traffic's going to divert to another street.
Right.
So we're going to be kind of, hey, it's a great solution. Now let's start getting more. So it's one of those things that the budget item's going to increase for that, because I know that some of the adjacent streets are going to want them as well. So we wanted to see first what the effect was going to be from the residents. And so I'm glad to hear anecdotally that there's an improvement there. We're going to put the speed meters back out to see if we see an improvement, and then we'll put them on the adjacent streets so that we can get them in queue to put speed humps there if that's what the neighbors want.
Yeah. And I know that myself, for one, would be in favor of increasing the budget, to take care of some of these improvements in the streets. But my question is, I got a call from a resident who lives on the corner of Harding and Coventry about the number of reported car accidents at properties. Have we had accidents? He said there have been people coming down Harding, taking a right onto Coventry. And he's had at least 2 incidents where someone has crashed into his house. And I just wanted to
follow an accident down there last year, but that was before the speed humps went up.
No, this was a while ago. This has not been recent. This was.
Okay, yeah, I remember there was a car into the house down there a couple of years back. I can look into the number of accidents at Harding and Coventry.
Yeah.
I don't remember it as raising a red flag. So I'll certainly look into it and I'll report back. I'll send an email and then report back on it.
Okay. And then change the subject here. You talked about the ambulance volunteers and the EMR refreshing, the CPR classes. Are those advertised so that folks in the community know that they're taking place and they can, take advantage of the opportunities if they choose to do so?
Yeah, so they're typically, we get requests for the CPR classes. We do them in-house for town employees as part of our, service to the town, and making sure that employees, especially public works and town hall, have those skills. And then we get requests from the community, from different businesses, so we go out to support those. I can ask Ellen about, publicizing those more, putting them on the webpage, so that we can increase the level of service there. The EMR is an emergency medical responder. That's police officers as first responders. So we don't advertise those. We do communicate with other departments in the area so that we can offset the cost of those classes.
Okay. And then my final question or comment is with respect to the number of incidents, burglaries, larcenies, do you do any comparative so we can look at what it was last month or this time last year so that we can sort of gauge as to the level of increase or decrease? And
We do. So we're currently up now. I can send those statistics. I'm sorry. We're currently up now, and that's what's troubling on our property crimes. Larcenies and burglaries are up this year. And so the real impact has to be on Capaco Plaza. The burglaries, the solution there is to look for patterns, incidents that look like they resemble one another, or we might have a person out there who's got an MO, and try and make an impact there by solving them. So far, we haven't seen a pattern, with the exception of those commercial burglaries where we're seeing someone go into offices and break into desks.
Yeah.
So we've got to follow up on that to see if we can make an impact.
all right. That's all I have. And thank you and your team for being very responsive and taking care
Thank
of
you.
the concerns of our citizens. Any other questions or comments for the chief?
I think it might be a good idea to get, I think Jonathan was already planning on it, but to have Jonathan at next month's meeting, I believe he was going to present some solutions, and we could talk about the traffic calming committee more comprehensively, perhaps.
That'd be great, because that seems to be one of the biggest issues in town.
It is, yeah. It's especially once we got the local road safety committee up and running, there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of interest in making an impact on that. So I'd be happy to try and push that forward and look for efficiencies as we talked about earlier.
All right, thank you. And do we have anyone from the fire department? I know we received one of the reports in an email.
Yes, sir. I just actually sent another report from Bloomfield and Center, but I just wanted to report they're both not attending tonight due to the fact that there's a swearing-in ceremony for the fire marshal, which is Jim Simone, tonight at 6:30. But Chief Barnett did want me to announce that tomorrow, September 13th, there will be a district meeting at fire headquarters beginning at 7 p.m. to vote on the proposed new firehouse located at 360 Tungus Avenue. So he wanted me to definitely mention that tonight.
360 Texas Avenue.
That vote's going to happen tomorrow at 7 at fire headquarters to vote on the proposed new firehouse at that location.
Okay, and that is with the Center Fire District, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. EMS. Attorney Bloomfield.
Good evening. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, councilors. As usual, Chief Hammock has done a thorough report on the BVA. There's nothing different from the EMS committee perspective. We are looking forward to seeing the results of the paid part-time EMTs. We'll be taking a look at that as to how it impacts on the shifts, billing, and where our future is going, but that's at least a month or so away. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? All right, thank you so much, Lou. Any other public safety concerns from the body or from any of our panelists? Okay. Is there a motion to approve oh, I'm sorry, Councilperson McClary.
Yeah, I forgot to ask the chief. I guess just got a text message. I guess some folks are listening in and asked me not to forget their questions. Chief, do you have a report on how many citations, or are we enforcing unregistered cars in town? I've gotten a number of complaints from residents about the amount of cars just sitting in folks' yards with no license plate tags, and it's just causing issues. And so is that under your jurisdiction, or is that the building and zoning officials?
We work hand in hand with the town zoning enforcement official. My community service sergeant, Stacy Thomas, works with Linda on that issue. One of the issues is sometimes they're in the driveway, but they're not unregistered. They may appear to be unregistered. But if they're not, then if they are not registered, then we take action when we're alerted of an issue. Yes. And if they want to send me in where those locations are, then I can certainly channel those to Sergeant Thomas and get working on it.
Thank you. That question was more for the residents so they can hear because they're watching.
Yeah, and I can gather the stats. I don't have them at my fingertips right now. I'd have to look into the computer system and look. But it is an issue that comes up in particular. One of my pet peeves is when you have people parking on their front lawn, and they might not have a registered car there. It's unsightly, and it's something that we take seriously and try to impact as best we can.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the members? Okay, great. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 8th?
Motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to find my mute button. Sorry. Yes.
Okay, great. Any discussion on the motion or the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Motion carries. And before we go into adjournment, Indy, are there any other folks in the public who want to provide comment?
I don't see any hands raised. We have 2 attendees still. I don't see any hands raised though.
Okay, great. Hearing none, thank you all for your time. If there's a motion to adjourn, entertain that.
So moved.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
All right.
See some of my colleagues in a few minutes at Town Hall.
Yes, see you very soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.